All right, everybody, this is the Windblown Square. This is one of two blocks you'll make this month for our June Saturday sampler. Actually, you will either make 3 of this block, or you will make 2 of this block and 1 of the little cat applique block. The cat applique is optional. In your kits, you have enough fabric to do either 3 of this, and that's it, or 2 of this and the cat block. The fabrics that are in both this and the cat block, there's not enough, so you cannot do 3 of this and the cat block. You can only do 2 of this and the cat block, or just 3 of this. Anyway, this is a very simple block. It's a 10-inch block. You will see there are 4 flying geese. We're going to make flying geese 4 at a time using the heart method. These other rhombuses are made with half square triangles. Super simple. Let's get started. All right, let's get started. This is going to be your main block you're making. You are going to make, block is going to be called Windblown Square. You're going to make either 3 of this block and that's it, or you're going to make 2 of this block and the little cat applique with the prairie points and all that sort of thing. I'm going to start making this block, Windblown Square, in this video. I'm only going to make 1. You obviously have to make 2 or 3, whichever way you choose to do it. It's a very simple block. It's a 10-inch block. Let's get started. Here's what you need for this block. All those other colors in your kit, those are for the cat applique one. So you need 2 5-inch squares of your background, which you need to provide. You need 4 3 1/8-inch squares of your background. You need a 5-inch square of indigo navy. You need a 6 1/4-inch square of blue lagoon. And you need a 5-inch square of spinach. If you look at your pattern, the pattern is very simple. You've got flying geese and you've got rhombuses. I am going to do this first video exactly the way Cheryl wrote it. I am then going to do supplemental videos with all the other ways you can do flying geese. And there actually is another way you can do this rhombus block. It's very similar to another way of flying geese. So I'll show you that in another video. This video is going to show you how to do it exactly the way Cheryl wrote the pattern. So to start off with, we're going to make the rhombus units. And these are the half square triangles. We're going to make these half square triangles the same way we made them in April, the same way we made them in May. We're going to take our 5-inch square of fabric B, which is indigo navy, pair it right sides together with a 5-inch square of your background fabric, and do the same thing with the spinach and your background fabric. We're going to sew all the way around and cut on both diagonals. And then we'll make the flying geese after that. So let's go over to the sewing machine and make our half square triangles. It's super simple, same way you've always done it. Let's just get to it. Alright, so let's get started. We're just going to sew around all 4 sides of this at our 1/4-inch seam allowance, just like we've done before. Let me know in the comments if you like this new camera angle at the sewing machine. I think this is kind of a cool one. You basically are seeing what I'm seeing. Alright, we are done with these 2 pieces of stitching. We are going to go back over to the cutting mat, cut on both diagonals, and open these things out. So let's go back over to the cutting mat. Alright, so now we are going to cut these on the diagonals like we have done the past few months. And then we turn this over, we press them open like we have done, like we did so many times for the May block. Only this is only a few, not near as many as we did then. And then we're going to trim these to 3 inches, just like we did last month. cutter, ruler. Okay, take that 45-degree line going down the seam. I'll try not to get my head under the camera. And then, of course, when you do the second corner, not only is the 45-degree line going down the seam, but you need to make sure you're at the 3-inch mark. Okay. All right, so now we have our little half squares. Get this last little bit of fuzz off right there. One like thread holding it. There we go. And we are now going to turn these into, well, she says rhombuses. They're actually parallelograms. I don't know if a rhombus is a type of parallelogram. Whatever. So we're going to take your picture here, pull this over here, and take a look at, well, let me grab the spinach one because that one's right side up here. This spinach one, if we're looking at this box right here, needs to be facing this way. And this spinach one right here is facing this way. And we're just going to sew them together. And you actually, because this is a rotating thing, you're just going to line everything up the exact same way. Blue one this way, and this way. This way, and that way. And also on my board here, down here at the bottom, this one and this one. And we're just going to sew these seams up the middle, and this section of making, she calls them rhombuses, I think is going to be done, and then it'll be on to the flying geese. So let's go back over to the sewing machine, and we will sew these together. All right, so let's stitch these together. My husband tells me, yes, these are rhombuses. Okay, rhombuses are a special type of parallelogram. I did not remember that from my geometry. And you can see I brought my whole mat over here with them, so I'm not moving when I pick them up. I know when you have two squares, it's easy to sew the wrong sides together. Okay, so we have these 4 sewn together. The only thing left to do on these is to press them open. So let's go back over to the iron and press them open. All right, let's get the pins out, get it cut apart, pressed open, and there are our rhombuses in just a second. Okay, our rhombuses are open. We're now going to set these aside, and we're going to start making our half square triangles. So what we need for our half square triangles, unplug the iron, we don't need it for a little while. We need our 6 1/4 inch blue lagoon, and we need our 4 3 and what size are these? Oops, wrong. 3 3/8 squares of background fabric. We're going to make 4 flying geese all at once. So let me turn this over to the cutting side. I'm going to grab my friction pen, which is right here. So how we make these is quite simple. So lay your blue lagoon aside for just a moment. You're going to turn all of your backgrounds upside down, and you're going to draw one diagonal line across your background squares. Okay. One diagonal line across all your background squares. Okay. Now what we're going to do, we're done with the, alright, so now bring your Blue Lagoon back in, its face up. You're going to lay 2 of your background fabrics right sides together in opposite corners, and so that their diagonal lines makes one continuous line. We're going to sew a 1/4 inch on each side of this line. Then we're going to cut on this line. So let's go over to the sewing machine, and we're going to make this stitch process. Hi, Granite. Okay, so we've got our square here with our diagonal line all the way across. It does help if you pin, and you don't have to pin over your seam line. You just need to pin. You can pin clear out here on the corners of your squares. Pin taut so it can't slide on you, because it would not be good if it slid. Okay, I'm going to get this out of the way again. So we're going to sew a 1/4 inch away on both sides of this line that we have drawn. Let me grab my tails of my thread that are trying to disappear on me. Okay. All right. And we cut our threads. Go back over to the cutting mat. All right, so now we have sewn our small squares on. We're now going to unpin, and we are going to cut on our drawn line, which is between our stitching lines, to make 2 pieces. And then I'll show you how this method gets its name as the heart method. Now I am going to try to get this lined up, but it actually really doesn't matter if your cut line is exactly on the dotted line, because you know what, that doesn't matter with you got it sewn. One last little spot. Okay, so this is how it gets called the heart method. If you look at this, you fold those 2 up and it kind of looks like a heart. So the next thing we do on this method is we do some ironing. Let me get my little iron plugged in. Okay, iron is now plugged in. Turning this over to the pressing side, and we're just going to press these open. Alright, now if you use your imagination and you cover up this, you can see that's half of a flying goose. So if you can figure out, if you can see what we're doing next, again we take our half, this is our heart now. We're going to take our one more square and lay it in this corner here of this corner here, and it goes up to that point up there, and you see it hangs over the edge, and that's totally okay. And we're going to sew a 1/4 inch from either side of this line. I am just going to put a pin in on either side here just to hold things tight. These pins you don't sew over on these ones. Out here you got plenty of room, just hold it tight. We do the same thing with this one. We We head back over to the sewing machine. Alright, so we're going to sew 1/4 inch on either side of this line on both pieces. Alright. Okay, so as you probably guessed, we're now going to cut apart on the lines, and we should have a total of 4 flying geese. Let's go back over to the cutting mat. Alright. I'm going to snip these apart here. Take the pins out. And cut that one. And I cut that one. And if we open it out, there you see our flying geese. Let me turn it over and do the press. This time the iron's hot because I left it on. You'll notice on these flying geese, they're pressed toward, this is the goose, these are the sky pieces, so in these flying geese they're pressed towards the light. We're not following the rule of press towards the dark here. Now in theory, Cheryl should have given us good measurements so that we don't have to trim anything other than little corners off. Because that's the way Cheryl writes patterns, is she doesn't really like trimming things unless she tells you to. I am going to turn this over. I'll show you how the Flying Goose trim tool works. So on this Flying Goose trimmed tool, there's measurements here. These measurements are the finished size, finished inside the seam line size. So we're making a 2.5 by 5 inch Flying Goose. So our first trim that we're going to take a look, see this nice line. Now you can use a regular ruler, but these nice lines here that just help line it up right. This solid black line E is the line we're going to be measuring off from. We're going to put that on our seam, and hopefully everything lines up perfectly, and it does. And I'm just going to trim off the right, and it's only a little bit of seam allowance. Trim off the top, and it's only a little bit of seam allowance. Cheryl did give us really good measurements. And then on the other side, we're going to turn it around. We're going to, again, we used E up here, we're going to use E down here. Turn everything around. Put this E on the seam lines. And actually, for me, my pieces look like they're a smidge small. I followed the measurements that Cheryl gave us, but my pieces look like they're a smidge small. So I may be wanting to mark my seam lines. I'm good up here at the top, but I'm short here on the sides and on the bottom. So that's something to watch for. You can, if you want to, use the instructions to cutting size on the tool here, and this says you'll use this set of instructions. For an E, we cut a 6 3/4 green square and 4 3 3/4 white squares, and they'd be oversized and cut down. You do have enough green. I believe you should have enough green to cut that size. I'm pretty sure I gave you a 7 inch wide piece of green, so you could cut this size, be oversized and cut down. Alright, so I'm going to just trim all of these, check them all for measurements. Yeah, I see here I'm short here. I mean, I've got a seam line there, but it's cutting it really small there, like less than 1/8 of an inch seam there at the bottom. I don't know whether my sewing was not accurate or what. Let me find, where's my other little scissors? Oh, these little scissors. I seem to have plenty of room up here at the top at the point of the goose, but the sides and the bottom are a bit shy for me. In fact, that one is not even going to have a seam allowance there. So I'm going to say, if you're watching this video and you're doing like me and they're not coming out right, use the measurements on your trim if you have the trim tool, use the measurements on your trim tool. If you don't have the trim tool, come see me. I have trim tools. I also will be putting up a video of all the various methods of making flying geese, and look at this one. So when it comes out here and you see down here my seams are not, my point's in the right spot, my seams are, I just kind of center it here between the two. If I put it off to one side, I'd be really lopsided one way, so I center it. Flying geese are not the easiest thing for me to do in this manner, actually. My best flying geese are the fold over ones, which is one of the ways I will show you when we do on another video later. I will show you how the other ways of doing flying geese. Yeah, and again, right here, I'm right at the edge. I don't have a seam allowance there. I don't know what went wrong with my flying geese, but they did not turn out the right size. Okay, so there's the flying geese. We're still going to put this together even with my flying geese being a little off. And it is what it is. Alright, so now how we put this together, it's really super simple. We have our first little rhombuses, rhomboid pieces, and we have our flying geese. Look at our picture here. All four sides are pretty much the same. We have a rhombus facing this direction and a flying goose that points at it, and we're going to sew them along this line here. So that's how that's going to work. And same thing with the blue ones. They're actually all the rhombus things are going to point the same direction. So we've got that one, got a blue one pointed that way, and we're going to put, they all get the green, so then this one actually turns this way on the mat, and then we have this one and this one. This one and this one. So the first thing we do is we sew the seams that go through the middle of each quarter, and then we sew the quarters together. So let's head back on over to the sewing machine and do a little sewing. Alright, brought everything over to the sewing machine. I am now going to sew these together. Now, when I put this in here, I do want this point of seam to kind of match this other side so that my points all kind of go together nicely. I am going to pin on either side of the seam allowance to hold things steady. And pin my corners. Because these ones, these rhomboid units are on the bias, so they're more stretchy. The Flying Geese are on the grain of the fabric. Alright, we need to press these open and then just sew our quarters together. So let's head back over to the pressing area. Alright, just going to cut these apart, press, and sew the quarters together. My points are okay. Okay, so these go together. Once again, consult the picture. Blue up in that corner, and here, and the green ones this way, and we just go sew them together. So let's head back over to the sewing machine. Okay, so let's just take the top row here, and we're going to match our seams. I'm going to sew from the rhombus side. Use that as my guide for my 1/4 inch on this. Alright, let's go press these and then come back to do the final seam. Right. Let's press these. And these I should be able to do a twist on in that seam there in the middle. All right. So this is what the block looks like, and so we just need to do that final seam across here. Let's go do that, and one final press, and it's done. All right, one last seam. Whether my seams want to kiss or not, I'm going to make them. Okay, let's give this one final press. And then our block is done. All right. Pulling the pins out. And yes, I hit a few pins as I was sewing. The advantage of sewing slowly is that things don't shatter when you hit pins. They just bend. All right. Didn't look too bad. There is the block, and it is done. All right, so here was our Windblown Square. Remember, you will make either 2 of this and the cat block, or 3 of this. Super simple, as you saw. Just 4 flying geese and some rhombuses. Really easy. Do stay tuned. In the next week or 2, I have some other things I have to do first, but in the next week or 2, I'm going to show you other ways. There's, I believe it's a total of 4 ways to do flying geese. This is one way. So I'm going to do videos of the other ways to do flying geese. As you notice, when I made mine in this method, I came up a little bit short, which I don't like. I mean, it's still there. I've got a seam allowance, but in some places it's a lot less than 1/4 of an inch. So I'm going to show you my favorite way to do flying geese 4 at a time. I will show you how to do flying geese 1 at a time. And hint, hint, on one of those flying geese 1 at a time methods, I'm going to show you another way to do the rhombuses as well, without this center seam here between the two. It's not half squares. You're going to see that and you're going to go, wow, that's so cool. Anyway, so it's going to be in the next couple of weeks. I have to get some stuff done for quilting on the dry side. The blocks have to go out on Tuesday, and this is Saturday, so I got to get those done to send the blocks to the other shops for quilting on the dry side. And then I'll come back to working on Saturday sampler blocks. So, all right, it was super easy. Remember to like, subscribe, share, smash that notification button, and thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.